Pioneering Herald, Tuesday, September 18th, 2019. Flu vaccine patch ditches needles and side effects. Futurity. Why AI is a threat to democracy and what we can do to stop it. Technology review. Self-directed learning. How unschoolers control their education. Big Think. Did a single genetic mutation make humans the heart attack species? Discover magazine. Origin of Life study points to chemical chimeras, not RNA. Quanta magazine. The lead. Flu vaccine patch ditches needles and side effects. Futurity. Scientists have been studying needle-free vaccine approaches for nearly 2 decades, but none of the technologies have lived up to the hype, says Benjamin L. Miller, professor of dermatology at the University of Rochester Medical Center and corresponding author of the paper in the Journal of Investigative Dermatology. Our patch overcomes a lot of the challenges faced by microneedle patches for vaccine delivery, the main method that's been tested over the years, and our efficacy and lack of toxicity make me excited about the prospect of a product that could have huge implications for global health. Origin of Life study points to chemical chimeras, not RNA. Quanta magazine. Research is beginning to show that starting with the right kind of mess is not only more realistic, but more effective at generating the materials vital to life, while also doing away with the problems that have plagued pure systems. There are times when we have mixtures rather than just the isolated reactants that people typically use, and we get better results, says Nicholas Hudd, a chemist at the Georgia Institute of Technology. When mixtures are taken into consideration, the emergence of life on Earth in some ways is not as hard as we might think it is. Did a single genetic mutation make humans the heart attack species? Discover magazine. A recent study by researchers from the University of California, San Diego, suggests that a mutation during the Lower Paleolithic period, which began around 3.3 million years ago, could be the culprit. This single genetic alteration inactivated a gene called CMAH, leaving early humans without the mechanisms that seem to protect other mammals from heart disease. Feature. Why AI is a threat to democracy and what we can do to stop it. Technology review. Rather than create a grand strategy for AI or for our long-term futures, the federal government has stripped funding from science and tech research. So the money must come from the private sector. But investors also expect some kind of return. That's a problem. At the same time that there's a tremendous amount of power being consolidated in China. China has a sovereign wealth fund devoted to fundamental basic research in AI. They're throwing huge amounts of money at AI, and they have a totally different idea than the US when it comes to privacy and data. This means they have way more data that can be mined and refined. With a central authority, it's super easy for the government to test and build AI services that incorporate data from 1.3 billion people. And that's just within their own country. Top headlines. Self-directed learning. How unschoolers control their education. Big Think. The role of the adults in unschooling is to provide these resources and opportunities and to facilitate a child's self-directed learning, but to do that without coercion. So nothing is required of the child. It's not that now we're going to sit down and do math for 45 minutes or we're going to read this particular history book for 45 minutes. It's really supporting those natural drives. And in that process, the research shows that young people, again, because they're naturally curious, are eager to explore these other topics and other ideas and become well-rounded, highly educated individuals. This device can recommend the best cancer treatment using just a patient's breath. Discover magazine. The newest cancer sniffer might not be as cute as a sharp-nosed canine, but it could give doctors a new way to determine the best treatment for patients using the melange of compounds in their breath. The eNose can detect with an 85% accuracy if a person will respond to immunotherapy, says researchers in a paper published today in Annals of Oncology. That could make it an alternative to current methods of determining which cancer treatment is best suited to different patients. Wire. Scientists create fully electronic 2D spin transistor, phys.org. Physicists from the University of Groningen constructed a two-dimensional spin transistor in which spin currents were generated by an electric current through graphene. Sources: President Trump is visiting Silicon Valley for the first time since 2016 for a fundraiser, but its location is a mystery even to the donors. Tech memes. On Tuesday, a person familiar with the matter said former Sun Microsystems CEO Scott McNealy was hosting the event after a neighbor told the Wall Street Journal that he had spotted tents erected outside Mr. McNealy's Palo Alto home. The importance of value abstraction in artificial intelligence for business leaders. Forbes. The abstraction of value has an interesting reciprocal consequence. The abstract becomes more valuable. As core AI tools become more democratized and commoditized, value creation will shift to AI applications to solve business problems. Robotic fish predator strikes fear into invasive species. Futurity. Researchers have published the first experiments to gauge the ability of a biologically inspired robotic fish to induce fear-related changes in mosquito fish. Their findings indicate that even brief exposure to a robotic replica of the mosquito fish's primary predator, the largemouth bass, can provoke meaningful stress responses in mosquito fish, triggering avoidance behaviors and physiological changes associated with a loss of energy reserve, potentially translating into lower rates of reproduction. U.S. and China begin trade talks Thursday, Fox Business. Deputy-level discussions will begin this week between the U.S. and China as representatives from both countries prepare for the next round of high-level talks scheduled for October. Why fossils are mostly male. Atlas Obscura. While these biases certainly generate interesting theories about Pleistocene behavior and modern human behavior, they create very real problems for science based on museum collections. These specimens are one of the largest sources of data for understanding the anatomy, variability, diet range, and more of long-extinct animals. And if that's the case, much of what we know about these creatures comes from a population that's not reflective of reality. This has been your newsreader, PG Gordy. This has been Pioneering Herald, Tuesday, September 18th, 2019.